Hi everyone. I'm Tim with Bluewater Travel, and I actually just got back from the Galapagos yesterday. I was on a 7-day, 7-night liveaboard called the Galaxy Diver 2. It's a brand new liveaboard that just started operations about a month ago. Very nice. I had an amazing trip. So I want to talk a little bit about my trip, about the travel, um, how to get there, what are the things we can see. Um, I think we're going to keep this a little bit informal. So if anyone has any questions, just feel free to either type it in the chat or maybe you can just unmute yourself and just ask me any questions as I go. So let's move to the first slide. Um, see, about the Galapagos. Yeah, so the Galapagos is about 1,000 kilometers off the coast of Ecuador. It actually lies across the equator. So the southern islands are south of the equator, and the northern islands of Wolf and Darwin, they're north of the equator. Um, just by comparison, Socorro and Cocos are about 500 kilometers, 5 to 600 kilometers off the coast of Mexico and Costa Rica. So the Galapagos is a lot more remote than those two other islands slash archipelagos. And because of that, it is a very unique archipelago. I'm sure everybody knows about the Galapagos and Charles Darwin and his theory of evolution and stuff like that. And when you go to the Galapagos, everything comes to life. Everything you've heard and read about and studied in school really comes to life when you see the giant tortoises and the boobies and the finches and the birds and especially the marine iguanas, my favorite. Oh wow, and it's absolutely incredible. Um, so it's a very unique place to visit and to dive. Um, because it's so remote, the authorities are very strict about what you can bring. Your bags are checked at the airport um, twice actually before they are flown to the Galapagos, just to make sure that we don't bring um, uh, anything that might hurt the very unique and fragile ecosystem in the Galapagos. Um, can we move to the next slide? So getting there, all the flights to the Galapagos originate from Ecuador. So you need to fly to either Quito or Guayaquil. If you live on the east coast of America, you're extremely lucky because you have direct flights from Miami. I think there's some direct flights from New York as well, directly to Quito and to Guayaquil. If you live on the west coast, like I do, there are no direct flights, so you need to take one. You need to make a connection. Depending on which airline you take, either in San Salvador or in Panama, and then you fly to Quito or Guayaquil. And from Quito or Guayaquil, then you take a domestic flight over to the Galapagos. So it's the travel is easy, but it could be a bit longer if you live on the west coast of the US. Quito and Guayaquil are both really, really, really cute cities. So if you do go to the Galapagos, I do recommend you spend 1 or 2 days in Quito and or Guayaquil to see the town, explore the city before or after you go to the Galapagos. There are two distinct seasons in the Galapagos. Um, One is the whale shark season between June to November. So right now we are currently in the whale shark season. And one is the manta season between December to May. Um, Typically, the whale shark season is the cold season, and the manta season is the warm season. The reason I didn't say cold season or warm season, and I'll say this a lot, is that the Galapagos is full of surprises. Um, if you go in the cold season, you got to be prepared for really warm temperatures. And if you go in the warm season, you have to be prepared for cold temperatures. The Galapagos can really throw anything at you in terms of conditions, in terms of visibility, in terms of marine life. Um, it's a very special place. Um, if I if you carry a US passport, there is no visas or anything that you need to bring with you to apply for ahead of time, which is really nice. Um, there is an entrance fee to the Galapagos. Um, you pay $100 US in Ecuador before you fly to the Galapagos, and when you land in the Galapagos, you pay another 20 US dollars. Um, Everything in Ecuador is done in US dollars, so if you're coming from the US, it's really easy. There's no need to change currency and stuff like that. But everyone does need to pay 120 US dollars to enter the Galapagos. Once you're in the Galapagos, there is no marine park fee because the $120 does include the marine park fee. So if you think about it, the Galapagos is extremely inexpensive when you compare it to other islands like Cocos and Socorro, whose marine park fee currently is over $600. So the Galapagos is actually pretty inexpensive in terms of the marine park fee and getting there. Next slide, please. So how do you dive the Galapagos? There, you can do some land-based diving in the southern islands, but really the best way to dive the Galapagos, if you're going to make the trip there, is to hop on a liveaboard. Um, and that's because some of the best diving is in the northern islands of Wolf and Darwin. Those two islands are where the big pelagics, the big whale sharks, the schooling hammerheads, those are where you see them. And it's far. It is about between an 8 to 10 hour transit from the southern islands to the northern islands. So the only way to dive those two amazing islands is via liveaboard. There's about a half dozen or so liveaboards in the Galapagos. Each liveaboard takes a maximum of 16 guests, and that's controlled by the Galapagos authorities. Even the itinerary is very strictly controlled by the authorities, so itineraries cannot change too much. If they do want to change the itinerary during the trip, the captain does need to get approval from the authorities in order to change. So everything is really strictly controlled in the Galapagos. You can have a liveaboard with 10 cabins, but still they're only allowed to take 16 divers. So it's really nice because, some places you go, like the Maldives or the Red Sea, they're huge liveaboards that take 30 over guests. In the Galapagos, most of the time you'll only have 16 people on the boat maximum, which is really nice. Most trips are 7 nights, and they do have 3 days at Wolf and Darwin Islands. There are some liveaboards that do 4 days at Wolf and Darwin Islands, and there are also some liveaboards that do 10-night trips. And those are really, really special because you get a lot of time in the northern islands. Again, that's where the big pelagics are, the schooling hammerheads, the whale sharks, they're all in the north. So there are some liveaboards that do 10 nights. Just contact us and we'll let you know which ones. I think those are some of the best trips to do in the Galapagos. The diving conditions, this is where the Galapagos can really surprise divers. The water temperature can range between 60 to 86. It can drop if there's a very strong thermocline. I think the coldest water I've dived in the Galapagos is 52 degrees. And that was in the warm season. I just got back during the cold season, so the temperatures were supposed to be cold, but in the northern islands, we were diving in 77-degree water every day, every dive. So it was really, really, really comfortable. So again, the Galapagos is full of surprises. Visibility can range from 40 to 100 feet. You won't get the amazing visibility that you get in the Caribbean, like Turks and Caicos. But that's because the Galapagos is full of life, full of plankton. It supports an amazing array of marine life. So visibility does tend to be slightly lower than, let's say, the Caribbean. But still, it's still really good. I think the worst visibility I had on my most recent trip was maybe 35 feet, 30 to 35 feet. And the best visibility was one day at Darwin Island. I believe we had 80-foot visibility. So it can vary. Um, every single boat in the Galapagos does have a minimum dive requirement. So all divers have to be advanced divers. And they do have a minimum, depending on the boat, between 60 dives. Some boats have 40 dives, some boats have 80 dive minimum um, for your dive experience. Bronson, I believe you have a question?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was just curious, in regards to kind of the fluctuating temperature, are dry suits very widespread on the liveaboard, or is
Yes.
it like too surgy for it, or would that be a good
Um,
idea for some of that?
both my dive masters used dry suits on every dive, even on
Hmm.
the warm dives. Um, if you do want to bring a dry suit, I would recommend bringing a crushed neoprene dry suit because those are less,
Right.
they're less like they're easier to swim with, they're less like a sail if the current picks up. Yes, but a lot of people do dive with dry suits in the Galapagos. If you do bring a dry suit, bring patches and bring glue.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Especially if the current is strong, because you will be hanging on to the rocks, and the rocks are sharp, and there's always a chance that you might
Yeah, I was wondering
poke a.
about the surge and currents and some of those conditions, how that would play with the dry suit. Is 7 mil probably the most common?
That is what I brought.
Yo,
Yeah, that
seven,
is what I
yeah.
brought. I brought a 7 meter, although I wish I had brought a five, because the water temps during my trip ended up being really warm. On hindsight, I should have brought a 5 millimeter and like a vest and a hood.
Right, right.
Um,
A little
I
more
ordered a five
modular.
millimeter, but it didn't come in time, so I had to bring my seven. So I was nice and toasty, very, very nice and toasty throughout the trip, which is nice. Most of the boats have a hot tub on board too, so that's a, a very
That's
nice
great.
plus for the wetsuit divers. Um,
Awesome. Yeah,
so
I appreciate it. Thank you.
yeah, no problem. So again, all the boats do have a minimum dive requirement, just because the conditions can get a little bit sporty. The currents can be strong. It can get choppy. They can also be down currents. I've encountered, although this trip I encountered very, very, very slight down current, but on previous trips, I have encountered pretty strong down currents. So we do want divers to be experienced. Um, even though if you are an open water diver, but you have 100, 200 dives, we can always ask for an exception from the boat. So just get in touch with us, get in touch with one of our agents. All our agents are dive masters and instructors, so they know what kind of questions to ask you. And the boats usually will give us those exceptions for you if we feel that, you are experienced enough and you'll be a safe diver in the Galapagos. Because at the end of the day, it's all about diver safety, right? Um, can we move to the next slide? Thanks. Oh, right. So now we're gonna quickly go over some of the islands. Um, this map that we have here is not to scale. Wolf and Darwin Islands are actually quite a bit further north of Isabella Island. From the tip of Isabella Island, it takes about 8 to 10 hours by boat to get to Wolf Island. So it's not really that close. But Wolf Island is an amazing dive site. There are four dive sites on Wolf Island. And that is the first time that you will encounter hammerheads, coming in really, really close to you at the cleaning stations where you encounter mantas, whale sharks, and if you're lucky, the big, big schools of hammerheads. Um, let's move to Darwin Island. Um, Slightly north of Wolf Island, about 2 hours by boat, you get to Darwin Island. So Darwin Island, of course, everyone knows is named after Charles Darwin. Oh, by the way, Wolf Island is named after Theodore Wolff, who is a German geologist. So, Darwin Island, amazing, amazing diving. Kind of like Wolf Island, where you get the big pelagics. Darwin Island usually is where you get the really, really, really big whale sharks coming in. Um, the biggest whale sharks I've ever seen are at Darwin Islands. I think the biggest one I saw this trip was 40 feet. The smallest one I saw was about 32 to 35 feet. So they are massive. I believe last year, uh, a scientist managed to do an ultrasound on a whale shark, which that in itself is incredible. And it took blood samples, and they found out that the whale sharks in um, the northern islands of the Galapagos, they were pregnant. So that could be a reason why they're so massive. But Darwin Island again is amazing diving. If you look at the picture there, it used to be there's one dive site. It used to be called Darwin's Arch, um, but in 2020 the arch collapsed, and now the dive site name has changed to Darwin Pillars. Just a little funny note about about the dive site. Let's now move to the Southern Islands. And I believe we are going to start with Fernandina Island. Fernandina Island is the youngest island in the archipelago. And you can see that it's right next to Isabella Island. The most itineraries will go to Fernandina Island so that you can dive with marine iguanas. And this is one of my favorite things to see in the Galapagos because you can see schooling hammerheads at Cocos, you can see schooling hammerheads in Japan, you can see hammerheads in a few other places around the world, but there is nowhere in the world that you can see marine iguanas. These are the only lizards in the world that depend on the marine environment completely for food. And they are just incredible, incredible, incredible creatures to see in the water. You can see how they evolve massive claws to hang on to the rock when they're feeding. When you get there, the dive masters will explain to you why they're so unique and how they feed and how they've evolved. And it's just really, really, really incredible. Um, at Fernandina Island, you can also see red-lip batfish, which I just found out yesterday from Nirupam because he saw them there. I never knew you could, but again, Galapagos is full of surprises. Um, usually where the marine iguanas are, there are, a ton of turtles. There's a ton of Galapagos sea lions swimming around. This dive is really easy. It's in about 15 feet of water. You can spend an hour just diving with these amazing, amazing lizards. So let's move over to Isabella Island. Isabella Island is right next to Fernandina Island. And again, most boats will have an itinerary that go to Isabella Island. Not all. So get in touch with us and we'll let you know which ones do. Um, Isabella Island is famous for mola molas. There are not many places in the world that you can reliably see mola molas. One of them is in Crystal Bay in Bali, and the other one is here at Isabella Island. And the ones here at Isabella Islands, they are huge. They can grow really, really big. Um, and that is one of the highlights of many divers' trips to the Galapagos is to be able to dive with mola molas. Um, my highlight actually of Isabel Island is the red-lipped batfish. You can see the picture there at the bottom. It is endemic to the Galapagos. And they're just such weird marine creatures. They crawl along the ground and they have this really grumpy looking face with big red lips, and the guides actually call them Angelina Jolie fish, which is really funny. Over here too, you can find seahorses. Those are the really big Pacific seahorses, about six inches tall. Um, what else can we see here? You can also see the Galapagos bowhead shark, which kind of looks like a Port Jackson shark or a horn shark if you live on the west coast of the US. Those are really, really cool sharks to see too. I saw my first Galapagos bowhead shark last week, actually. So that was really exciting for me. Can we move to the next slide? Great. So I know I already talked a lot about the marine life, but a lot of these marine life they're endemic to the Galapagos. So it's really, really exciting. And a lot of the dive masters there are very experienced. They all live in the Galapagos. And they've all been diving for many years, and a lot of them are naturalists as well. So a lot of them will know a lot of the history, the evolution of these animals, and why they're endemic to the Galapagos and their unique feeding behavior and all that is really, really interesting. There's a lot of turtles. I know I skipped over turtles. I didn't talk a lot about turtles, but there's a lot of turtles in the Galapagos. They're mostly green turtles, um, but they are everywhere. Um, I did a trip in 2019 and we literally had to push turtles away to see hammerheads. So if you like turtles, Galapagos is a great place to go. Not so many hawksbill. I found out because my dive master got really excited when he saw a hawksbill turtle, which I thought was really interesting. So yeah, most of the turtles there are green turtles, which they get really, really big. So they're really, really nice to see. They are not scared of humans at all. They do come really close to humans, so they make really good photography subjects. Um, so let's talk a bit about the land animals on the next slide. Um, all the liveaboards do include land trips, so you won't miss out too much on seeing some land animals that again are endemic to the Galapagos. Um, some liveaboards do two land tours, some liveaboards do one land tour. So again, if seeing the animals on land is a big attraction to you, get in touch with us and we'll let you know which ones do more land tours. Um, some of the unique ones are the blue-footed boobies, as you can see on the top. The Galapagos land tortoises, those are just incredible to see. There's actually a few different species of Galapagos land turtles. And usually on the last day when the diving is done, um, the boats will bring us back to Santa Cruz Island, where the elevation gets really high and you're kind of almost in a cloud forest and they get a lot of rain. So there's a lot of grass. So the tortoises have moved from the ocean up into the highlands so they can feed on grass. And they're just really amazing, unique creatures to see. You can also see the red balloon frigate at the bottom. That's the one you see is a male with its big balloon fully blown up. And that's really, really incredible to see. Um, a very unique animal to see in the Galapagos is the penguin. I mean, you wouldn't think you'd be able to see a penguin at the equator, but the water is cold enough for them to live there, and they've moved up and they've evolved and they stayed. And there's penguin colonies around some of these southern islands. The Galapagos sea lions, you will most definitely see Galapagos sea lions as well. You can see one in the background there, and not just marine iguanas. There's also land iguanas in the Galapagos. You can see on the left. So there's a lot of birds. We didn't take any pictures of finches, but there's also finches that are really unique at each particular island, that are different from another island. There's also flightless cormorants. So the list just goes on and on. I can spend hours talking about all the unique animals to see in the Galapagos. But I think my time is up, and I'm going to pass the mic back to Nirupam so you can talk a little bit about um, photography and some of the marine animals that you can see as well. Oh, Bronson, you had
Yeah,
another
can I just
question?
ask one more quick question? In
Yeah.
regards to kind of the land portion of the trips, how are those usually structured? Like, is it kind of guided tours to certain areas to, check out or interact in some way with some of the different animals or landmarks, things like that?
Exactly. They all have to be guided by a naturalist. It could be your dive guide on a boat that is a naturalist, or it could be another naturalist at the island when you get there. So you will have someone explaining to you all the unique, like the blue-footed bluebies and the red balloon frigates, and so it's actually a really nice experience to do the land tours.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is that kind of just baked into the
Yes.
diving schedule, or do you have like a
Yes.
choice of diving versus a land
No.
tour situation? It's
It's
kind
it's
of
all baked in. So
yeah,
it's all part of the boat's itinerary. And again, different boats have different itineraries. So when you get in touch with us, we'll let you know how many land tours they do and stuff like that.
it's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Great. Well, then I'll start taking it from here. I'll try to keep it pretty short, but I just wanted to share a few photos that we've taken on our photo workshops. So I'm Nirupam. I lead some of our photo workshops at Bluewater Travel. Um, and I also run the underwater photography guide. So if you guys have any photo questions, feel free to, let me know at any time. But I wanted to share some photos taken by Tim, Scott, and myself on our workshops and talk a little bit about, what you do during a workshop, especially in the Galapagos. So um, as Tim mentioned, Darwin is one of the best places in the world to see massive whale sharks, which can be a little bit of a tricky photo subject. There is a lot of current at Darwin, but especially during your safety stops and as you go up and down, you do have the opportunity to face these massive animals. Sometimes natural lighting is necessary. Sometimes you can get strobes on them, depending on how close you can get. Tim got this pretty cool photo with the diver behind it. Another kind of pelagic animal that's pretty cool to see are these eagle rays. And I like Tim's technique here. He actually used black and white. I'm assuming Tim to kind of bring it out since there wasn't much strobe power on them. But that's a pretty common technique, especially for pelagic water photography, and it comes out really nicely. So just another angle on these whale sharks. Just you can see how massive they are at Darwin just by looking at like their body shape. Um, so that's yeah, and comparing it to a diver, getting a diver in your shot can really put that into perspective. And I was pretty jealous of this photo. So Tim got an incredible photo. Tim, was this last week on your most recent trip?
Yes, I took this at Darwin Island at the cleaning station last week.
Oh, okay, that's awesome. So yeah, cleaning stations are a great way to get close to sharks. So for those of you that don't know much about hammerheads, uh, scalloped hammerheads, the ones that are most common in school in the Pacific, tend to actually be very skittish compared to other sharks. So they'll see you and they'll go in the opposite direction. The difference in the Galapagos is that strong current and the fact that you're kind of hunkered down towards the rocks makes the hammerheads approach a lot closer. So you have a lot more opportunities to take really nice shots of the hammerheads. This is probably one of the best I've seen of a scalloped hammerhead. It's really hard to get detail on them because they do kind of stay a little bit aloof. So yeah, nice job, Tim. That's definitely a shot I'm jealous of. That's awesome. And that's with the new A6700, I believe.
Yes, the one that you set me up with. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are these moments usually are you like hunkered on, kind of clasped onto a rock and while the hammerheads are kind of rolling by, so they're putting on like a little show for you during the dive?
Exactly. You're
Yeah.
hunkered on the rock, you're holding on, and wow, they just come by, and this photo is not cropped.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
it's amazing. That's such a
yeah.
good cool.
So he was probably a few couple feet away, right?
Yeah, it was really close. I could literally reach out and touch him if I wanted to.
That's awesome. Yeah, so those kind of experiences are possible in the Galapagos. I'd say more so than other places. I know Tim mentioned there's other places in the world where you can see schooling hammerheads. Getting schooling hammerheads that close is kind of a unique thing. Um, so here's another blue-footed booby. These guys are pretty interesting. We'll on some itineraries, like on the photo workshop itinerary, I believe, we do a tour of I think it's Seymour Island on the first day, and you get to see a lot of the unique critters in the Galapagos on that day, including nesting boobies, which are on eggs. And this one actually had a young booby underneath it that it was tending to. But another creature that you do see on that walk on the island are these land iguanas. So it's thought that the marine iguanas actually evolved from the land iguanas, and the land iguanas are a lot of fun to shoot because they'll come right up close to you. So I took this with my macro lens, so it's a 100 millimeter lens. He was probably a couple feet away, and they're not really afraid at all. So you have lots of opportunities to take photos. So the group just kind of walks in a line, and you have all these animals on the path, including these two male iguanas that were fighting. So they were actually in their kind of attack pose, comparing body size. So you do get to witness some interesting behaviors. That's cool to photograph. And then even just when you're on the boat, when you get to the dive site, you have these. I think these are brown-footed boobies, not blue-footed boobies, but they'll
Yeah.
come right onto the boat. They're not afraid of people at all, so you can get as close as you want. And this one was kind of opening its beak to I don't know why, but these boobies were actually sitting right in front of Darwin's pillars. So you can kind of get some cool backgrounds behind them too, and some really dramatic landscapes, which I'll show pretty soon here. This is one of the many turtles that you see in the Galapagos. If it wasn't for all the other animals in the world, I think the Galapagos would be famous for its turtles. I mean, all the other animals on the islands. I think the Galapagos would be famous for the turtles. There's just way too many to be normal. I've done dives there where I've seen at least 20 turtles on a dive, maybe even 30, all in a line, just sitting in the sand. So you can have your pick on turtles and take as many photos as you want, including a photo like this, where you just have turtles fighting over space and fighting over algae to munch on. So when you're not looking at sharks in Darwin, that's kind of what you're looking at. Another unique animal that you can see in Darwin is the peacock flounders, and they make really interesting photos because they're so camouflaged. Now, it can be kind of hard to get a photo of them because most of the time you're shooting a wide angle lens when you're um, at Wolf and Darwin, since you're looking for sharks. But you can usually get some cool perspectives on these peacock flounders too. So there's also lots of schools of fish in the Galapagos. I'd say the best places for schooling fish that I found have been probably Isabella Island. And you get these really nice yellowtail sturgeon fish, which really make a cool composition because you have the really sharp yellow in each photograph. And then we do a couple dives sometimes, especially if you go looking for penguins, where you can get schools in the shallows, and you can get Snell's window behind them, like you can see in this photo, where you see the clouds and you see that tunnel look, which really happens if you can get your subject pretty close to the surface. I thought this was kind of a neat photo. It's one of the many scorpion fish you also see in the Galapagos. You can see them camouflaged right here, and they really blend in well to the substrate. Now you might notice that there's actually not too much coral in the Galapagos. There's a lot of rock, so it's rock and some hard cup corals. But I think I think a big reason for that is there's a lot of wave action and a lot of current, and that's why it's advanced diving. So especially on these Pacific islands, you get a lot more wave action, current, less coral, but more big animals in life and critters kind of hiding among the coral, which are fun to photograph. There's one place in Isabella Island that was pretty fun that we went to once, where we went snorkeling with those schools of fish and penguins, as you can see in the split shot here. And everybody in the boat, we were trying to teach the concept of, okay, can you get these penguins as a split shot? Because sometimes it's hard to get them underwater. They're very, very fast. And getting them underwater, um, is kind of like getting a needle in a haystack. If you get lucky, a penguin might go by, but it's a lot easier to approach them when they're on the shore. So we were doing some split shots and playing around with them. And we had some people on this workshop that got even better photos where you could see the penguin almost jumping into the water. It's a pretty cool perspective. Another kind of school of fish here. So there is a site, and I'm forgetting the name, but if you email us and ask us about it, I'll let you know. But there's a site here that actually is an underwater volcano. And these bubbles that you see, I left the bubbles in there, even though they look like backscatter, the bubbles are actually sulfuric or gases, I think. So they're gases coming from that volcano. And there's a nice school of Cortez angelfish, which are very, very pretty to photograph as well. So that's a pretty cool site. There's hammerheads there as well, but I like looking at some of the other critters that you can see too. And of course, you have your classic penguin photos. So also at Isabella Island, you can get right up close. And sometimes, especially on our workshops, we ask the boat if we can take the Zodiacs out and go check out some of the coastline. So when you're in a Zodiac, they'll take you close to the shore and you can get photos of the penguins and the sea lions and boobies that are all on the shore. And in some locations, you can actually see penguins, sea lions, blue-footed boobies, cormorants, and a couple others. Oh, turtles, all on the same beach. Oh, and the marine iguanas, all on the same beach in the same photo sometimes. So it's an amazing place where you have just a huge variety of life in one spot. Now, this is a unique fish that is also specific to Isabella Island. I think, at least that's where I've seen them most of the time.
Yes. Yeah.
This is the harlequin wrasse, and they're unique among marine fish where I don't know of any other marine fish that I've seen that look like koi fish. So I think it's interesting. They almost look like goldfish, but they're actually a wrasse. But they have the same kind of gold, black, and white color patterns, and they can range all the way from completely white to completely black or completely orange, and somewhere in between. So the in-between ones are pretty cool to shoot, and there's lots of them, so you will get ample opportunity to shoot them as well. Like Tim was saying, the turtles get really close in the Galapagos. They're not afraid at all. I think this one actually wanted to munch on some algae right about where I was floating. So it got right up to me, and I took the photo right there. But for the most part, this photo was actually taken with a wide-angle rectilinear lens. I'd say most of these photos you want to have a wide-angle rectilinear lens, so not a fisheye, because things are going to be a little bit farther. They're not going to be super close, unlike these sea lions, which do get pretty close. But when in doubt, if you have a full frame camera, 16 to 35 lens would be great. If it's a crop sensor or micro four thirds, like somewhere about a 9 to 18 is where you want to be with a wide angle lens. And if you have any lens questions, email us and we're happy to help you figure out lenses, cameras, accessories, anything that you need for the trip. So yeah, lots of Galapagos sea lions on many of the islands that you go to, and they're pretty curious. They'll come right up to you. This guy was blowing bubbles. He was also kind of sleeping, so you can get some really cool interactions with them. But if you do bring a macro lens, there are some interesting macro subjects which I wanted to show. So there's some of the reef fish are really colorful and pretty charismatic. And oh, here we go. There are a couple of nudibranchs. It's not my best photo. I actually want to go back to the Galapagos specifically so I can try to get a photo of you guys. But I forgot the name of the nudibranch, but they're really, really pretty. You see them on some of the sites on Isabella on both sides of the island, but typically in the colder water. And they're just really vibrant blue nudibranchs. I think they're called blue line nudibranchs, actually.
Are there any particular sites that you would opt for a macro lens over a wide angle, like having never gone, let's say, like that are geared more towards that?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So there's a couple of sites where you kind of have to choose. Punta Vicente Roca on Isabella Island is the site where you can see Mola Mola, but it's also the site where you can see red-lip batfish.
Yeah.
So then you kind of have to choose, okay, do I want to shoot the red-lip batfish or do I want to go for the Mola Mola? Usually we do a couple of dives there, so you have an opportunity to try a couple times. If you have a system where you can do wide angle and macro, would be ideal, but that's where I would bring a macro lens. There's one more site, like I was telling Tim, on Fernandina, where you can actually see the red-lipped batfish, and that's where you can also find the nudibranchs and some of these other small reef fish. And I believe it's right next to Cabo Marshall, um, where the iguanas are. Just on the other side of the bay, there's a bit of a deeper dive that you can do. So.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of sites. If you were ever on a workshop, I would probably let you know right before the dive, hey, you could do a wide angle or macro lens here. But it's definitely worth bringing a macro lens. It's not the highlight by any means, but it's definitely worth having. Um, and these guys are pretty charismatic as well. And I forgot the name of this fish, but they're all over the place. So there's a few shrimp as well if you look in the cracks and holes and corners. So they can be really pretty. Uh, I like to use like side lighting coming from either side of my strobes, and that really makes them glow, like in this photo. And of course, there's the marine iguanas. So the marine iguanas are hopefully, if you're there on a good day, they're everywhere, and they're munching on algae, but only during a specific time of day. So it's between 10 o'clock and 1 p.m., I believe, something like that. So you have a narrow window, but when you do get into that window, they basically all come out at the same time, and you can see them from the boat. And they're really shallow, and they eat algae until you can tell they're done, and then they swim back to shore, and that's it. So if you can get them swimming overhead, you can get some really cool perspectives of having these Godzilla looking critters in the ocean. It's especially cool if you can get some light rays going through the water as well. Or you can get a couple of them on, near each other. In all of these photos, I actually chose not to shoot with strobes. It disturbs the iguanas less, and it can make for an interesting perspective, a natural light perspective too. So that's all with natural light in the shallows.
This reminds me, I don't know if you ever mentioned like what's a general dive profile in terms of depth? Like, this one's very shallow, but across the majority of the dives, are they hanging fairly low or is it kind of a mix?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is a wide mix. So I would say typically you're going to experience dives that are in the 50 to 70 foot range, especially
Mhm.
Darwin Wolf, probably about 50 to 70 feet. Sometimes a little deeper if the hammerheads are a little deeper. Punta Vicente Roca, the mola molas are usually at about 100 feet, so that one's probably the deepest dive. You can opt not to go that deep as well and just look for the batfish, which are about 60. And then you have dives that are in between, which are going to be maybe in the 20 to 60 foot range.
Mhm.
Um, Especially like I think Cousins Rock is usually about that. Sometimes you can go down to 70 to look for seahorses. And then there's Fernandina, which is actually pretty shallow. So uh, with the iguanas, it's only about 10, 15 feet for the most part. Um,
Gotcha. Cool.
yeah. But I would be prepared to do one or two dives where you're going down 100, maybe even a little bit deeper than that. But for the most part, most dives, max out at 70 feet or so.
Awesome.
This is a little bit more of just showing how much life can be there, and some of the corals. So these are the cup corals on the east side of Isabella Island, and then a hogfish as well, and then just schools of fish in the background, and it's just a very pretty reefscape. Another small critter, I think this was I think it's called Cousins Island. Um, yeah, trying to remember my sites from a year ago, but you can get these hawkfish in the coral, which are really pretty. Now, again, I always had a wide angle lens with me, and thankfully this one is pretty cooperative, and I was actually able to get a close focus wide angle photo with the hawkfish. So if you ever are thinking about, how do I get a photo like that, try to pull your strobes in and dial the power down, and that'll reduce backscatter, but allow you to light it without having any shadows in the frame. This is one of the white tip reef sharks you can see there. So there's lots of different shark species you can see in the Galapagos, but white tips are probably the most underrated. On the east side of Isabella Island and kind of going east from that, you can usually see them in crevices and caves. And there's a few sites where you'll see them regularly. You can actually see there's a fin of another one right above that in this photo. So that's definitely a highlight for me as well. And then finally, as we were saying on the last day, you can see Galapagos tortoises, and that's one of the classic reasons people go to the Galapagos. They're not hard to find. You're almost pretty much guaranteed to see lots of them. And they can be doing some really interesting things like walking through the forest, and you can get some cool landscape shots like that, or fighting or mating, which is a really incredible thing to see. These guys were hissing at each other. They sounded like cats. Um, and they were fighting, and yeah, it just lended itself to a really cool perspective here. So if you are, planning on doing a lot of topside photography, I actually did all of mine with a 100 millimeter macro, but I think a 70 to 200 millimeter would probably be the best lens, in my opinion. You could do a 600 millimeter for some of the farther lens stuff, but if you're thinking about doing some telephoto photography, 70 to 200 is probably the prime lens for that. And then, as I said, there's a lot of dramatic landscapes. So this is our vessel during the workshop with Isabella Island. It's not always sunny. It's usually pretty good weather, but it can make for some cool landscape shots, like with the clouds here on the island. And it's a little bit reminiscent of California and some of the other Pacific islands that I've seen as well. And yeah, that's our group from the last workshop with the tortoise. I think I have another one with its head up. But it's yeah, a lot of fun. So, oh, and then this is the town on, I think that's San Cristobal thing, but not positive. Oh, and finally, I added this one last minute, but I just wanted to show Tim's photo of the schooling hammerheads in Darwin because I think it's just a really incredible scene, and one of the few places in the world you can see that. Okay. Well, I think that's all of the photos that I have. So yeah, if you guys are interested in joining a photo workshop, I'll be leading one in May of 2026. We're also going to have one in 2027. So if you're looking for those dates, feel free to email us at trips@bluewaterdivetravel.com. But I think my dates are the 7th to the 17th of May in 2026. And we'll be doing the full itinerary, Wolf, Darwin, Isabella, Fernandina, so you'll be able to see all of this stuff there as well.
And if those dates don't line up for you, we have negotiated with a few boats, some amazing specials, for 2024, 2025, and 2026. So you're not just limited to last minute specials. And those specials are really, really good. I've been telling all my friends about them. I've been telling them that, hey, if you want to go to the Galapagos, now's a good time because those specials, they are exclusive. And it's a big discount. So it's a really good time to book them. We got one of those specials extended for a week. But the other special is ending in 3 days. So if you want to book, now's the time to book it. All you have to do is go to our website. There's a chat function. Just chat with one of our agents. Let them know that you want to go to the Galapagos. They'll point you to the website, to the page so you can see the specials. You can send us an email, info@bluewaterdivetravel.com, and our agents will usually respond to you within a few hours because we have agents all over the world. So you can email us at 2 a.m. and you'll probably get a response by the time you get up in the morning. And again, those specials are really, really, really good and they expire soon and you probably will not see those specials again, maybe. So if you're planning to go to the Galapagos, if you want to go to the Galapagos, if you've been and want to go back, now's a really good time to start looking at some trips.
Awesome. I think we can. Oh, and then just to be clear, our email is trips@bluewaterdivetravel.com. You can also send us a message through Facebook, and that'll get you right to us. So yeah, I think we can open it up to full Q&A now, I believe. So if anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask about the Galapagos, underwater photography, any of our trips, we'd be happy to open it up now.
I have a quick question. How do you find the conditions like above water during the liveaboards? We went to the Socorro recently and the crossing was fairly rough, let's just call it. Like when we got to the island, it was pretty calm, but I remember that we were bouncing. Like how does that compare just like the experience of either the trip out on the liveaboard and kind of being on the water there? Is it relatively calm or is it pick up a little bit?
So we don't have those long crossings like you have in Socorro and Coco. So the longest crossing you're gonna get is maybe a 12-hour crossing if it's rough. So
Hmm.
that's about half the time that it takes you to get to Socorro. And again, I cannot stress how much the Galapagos is just full of surprises.
Yeah.
I had one trip where it was flat, just completely flat, no wind, and I had a trip where it was just bumping the whole way. But again, those crossings are a lot shorter, so
Yeah.
they're not as demanding as Cocos or Socorro.
Gotcha.
Okay. Any other questions? You're welcome to unmute yourself or to ask them in the chat.
I have one question. So one thing you mentioned is Galapagos is usually for advanced divers, but you don't necessarily need to be advanced to rescue. About how advanced do you recommend? How many dives? Like, you know, how do you gauge whether you're ready to go to Galapagos or not?
So I would say if you have a wide variety of experiences, especially in current. If you dove in, let's say, the Maldives, or if you dove in Komodo, where there's a decent amount of current, you will probably be good to go to the Galapagos. Most boats recommend about 60 to 80 dives. Obviously, the more experienced you are as a diver, the more comfortable you are in the water, the more you're able to enjoy all the marine life that the Galapagos has to offer. I know it's weird, but some of this last week, some of my best experiences has been snorkeling. We managed to snorkel with dolphins, pilot whales. I even got a video of a humpback whale underwater last week. So it's just absolute. Oh, and we saw a blue whale, which went right under the bow of the boat
Wow.
that we were on, and the whole boat was just screaming. So you just never know what you're gonna get in the Galapagos. It's absolutely insane. But as a diver, I would say the minimum is 60 dives, and preferably if some of those dives you have encountered currents before.
Got it. Thank you.
Great. Any other final questions?
Do you have any initial commentary on, I'm sure they're all a little bit different, but the differentiation between the liveaboard options? I know you mentioned you just got back from Galaxy, which was a bit like newly renovated or designed. Is there other ones that you feel strongly about or feel strongly not to go with?
There's a wide variety of liveaboards. There's really luxury liveaboards, and there's also budget liveaboards. And there's mid-range liveaboards. So it really depends on what's important to a diver. Some divers just, I don't care, budget liveaboard, want to go for the diving. Some divers are like, okay, I want to go and I want to do 2 to 3 dives a day.
Right.
4 dives is not for me. So there's certain liveaboards for that as well. There's certain liveaboards that are just like 4 dives a day, every single day. So there's I would say in the Galapagos there's a liveaboard for every diver. So all you need to do if you want to go to the Galapagos is get in touch with us, and we will match you. We will ask you a bunch of questions. what's important to you, and we'll match you with the correct liveaboard. So yeah, but there is one for every person, I believe.
You're on. Good to know. Thanks.
Yeah.
Great. We have a
Sonia.
question. Yep. Sonia.
Hi, I just wanted to start out by saying you are both very informative, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
It's definitely very exciting. And to that note, I know you said that your agency takes care of matching us and making sure that we're with the best boat option. Does that include travel to and from the destination, or are you guys just in charge of the liveaboard itself, and then we are responsible for all the accommodations getting to the destination? How does that work?
So we are a full service travel agency. We can definitely help you with flights, with and any logistical questions and how to get there. We can even help you if you want to stay longer. We can help you with tours in Quito and Guayaquil. We can help you with all that. And a lot of us have been to the Galapagos. So a lot of us have all this kind of special tips that we share among all our agents. So we all know how to help you if you are coming from Seattle, or if you're coming from New York, or you're coming from Asia, even if you're coming from Singapore. We are there to help you the whole way, from getting there to when you're there on the boat, what to wear, what to bring. We can help you with all that.
Okay, great. And then the last thing I was going to ask is, in terms of, I know we just got back from Mexico, so we were in Isla Mujeres, Playa del Carmen, and so we had a really cool experience with that. I personally struggled with buoyancy in my trim. We found out throughout the trip that my weight wasn't being distributed appropriately. So one dive I was 8 pounds, the next I was 12. So I think that definitely affected it. So in terms of that, do you recommend just make sure I get to a place where those two are like at a good level before I even think to come on a trip like this? Because I know, like you said, current and drift tend to be the biggest obstacles, which I already know I'm struggling with currently.
I would say yes. It's like I think I mentioned earlier, the more comfortable you are as a diver, the more fun you have, enjoying the animals. So you are seeing the whale shark, swimming with the whale shark, as opposed to trying to control your buoyancy and stuff like that. But there are other destinations that will kind of be like a stepping stone to the Galapagos. For example, Socorro. Socorro is known as the Mexican Galapagos. You go during the right season, you see whale sharks, you can see schooling hammerheads, Galapagos sharks, dolphins, massive oceanic mantas. So that is why they call it the Mexican Galapagos. And conditions are more predictable than they are in the Galapagos. So if you are worried about how advanced the conditions can be, again, get in touch with us. Let us know your experience, because again, all our agents, we all dive masters and instructors. We've all taught, students, we all guided dives before, and we won't send you to a place where we feel that you won't enjoy yourself, or a place that's too advanced for you. And then we'll recommend somewhere that has the same amazing diving, but a place that you'll be comfortable diving in until you get the experience to jump from a Socorro to a Cocos to a Galapagos.
Okay, thank you. That was very helpful. I actually looked into that. We were deciding between the western coast of Mexico or the eastern coast, but recognized we're only open water, so we wanted to gain practice, and the calm, warm waters of the Yucatan Peninsula were better fit for us, as we only had 10 log dives, so it was a better stepping stone. So I think that would be a good idea for someone like me to be able to gain the confidence to then be able to go out and, like you said, enjoy the actual naturalistic beauty, as opposed to fiddling with my weights and buoyancy and the rest of it. So thank you very much. I appreciated your guys' time, and it was very informative.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sonia. Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, yeah, I appreciate your guys' time and for joining. Thanks very much. Be sure to get in touch if you have any questions at all. We're always happy to help. And yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Yeah, thank you both. That was great.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for coming. Bye.
Bye.